Python programming language. Python variables and data types. 1. A variable is a container for a value. It can be assigned a name, you can use it to refer to it later in the program. Based on the value assigned, the interpreter decides its data type. You can always store a different type in a variable. For example, if you store hello in a variable, later, you can store world. There are certain rules to what you can name a variable, called an identifier. Python variables can only begin with a letter, A to Z, or an underscore. This is wrong. This variable name starts with an underscore. The rest of the identifier may contain letters, A to Z, underscores, and numbers, 0 to 9. This is wrong. Python is case-sensitive, and so are Python identifiers. Name and name are two different identifiers. This is wrong. Because the variable name with a capital N is not defined. To assign a value to Python variables, you don't need to declare its type. You name it and type the value after the equal sign. You can type age equals dinosaur, but age equals dinosaur doesn't make sense. You can't put the identifier on the right-hand side of the equal sign, though. This code causes an error. Neither can you assign Python variables to a keyword. You can assign values to multiple Python variables in one statement. Or you can assign the same value to multiple Python variables. Swapping means interchanging values. To swap Python variables, you don't need to do much. You can also delete Python variables using the keyword del. Python variables and data types. There are 4 numeric Python data types. Int stands for integer. This Python data type holds signed integers. We can use the type function to find which class it belongs to. An integer can be of any length, with the only limitation being the available memory. This Python data type holds floating point real values. An int can only store the number 3, but float can store 3.21 if you want. Python data type complex holds a complex number. A complex number looks like a plus bj. Here, a and b are the real parts of the number, and j is imaginary. Use the is_instance function to tell if Python variables belong to a particular class. It takes 2 parameters, the variable /value and the class. A string is a sequence of characters. Python does not have a char data type, unlike C++ or Java. You can delimit a string using single quotes or double quotes. To span a string across multiple lines, you can use triple quotes. As you can see, the quotes preserve the formatting. \n is the escape sequence for new line. You can also display a burst of characters in a string using the slicing operator. This prints the characters from 5 to 9. String formatters allow us to print characters and values at once. You can use the % operator. Or you can use the format method. You can concatenate, join, strings. However, you cannot concatenate values of different types. A list is a collection of values. Remember, it may contain different types of values. To define a list, you must put values separated with commas and square brackets. You don't need to declare a type for a list either. You can slice a list the way you'd slice a string with the slicing operator. Indexing for a list begins with 0, like for a string. Python doesn't have arrays. Python supports an inbuilt function to calculate the length of a list. A list is mutable. This means that you can reassign elements later on. To iterate over the list, we can use the for loop. By iterating, we can access each element one by one, which is very helpful when we need to perform some operations on each element of list. Multidimensional lists. A tuple is like a list. You declare it using parentheses instead. You access a tuple the same way as you'd access a list. The same goes for slicing it. Python tuple is immutable. Once declared, you can't change its size or elements. A dictionary holds key-value pairs. Declared in curly braces, with pairs separated by commas. Separate keys and values by a colon symbol. The type function works with dictionaries too. To access a value, you mention the key in square brackets. You can reassign a value to a key. Use the keys function to get a list of keys in the dictionary. A Boolean value can be true or false. A set can have a list of values. Define it using curly braces. It returns only one instance of any value present more than once. However, a set is unordered, so it doesn't support indexing. Also, it is mutable. You can change its elements or add more. Use the add and remove methods to do so. Add an element. Remove an element.